I have been wanting to talk to you, Melissa, for so long. I think it's been over a year that I said we've got to do a recorded conversation because you have so much good information to share. And I knew that people would really benefit from hearing you speak. So thanks for meeting with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored. I'm happy to be here.
Yay. So I want to start. I know that your knowledge of health, nutrition, the really like the detailed inner workings of the human body, it's evident that your knowledge is really, really deep. So I want to know, when and how did your journey to functional medicine start? Was there a life event or something that happened that kind of got you started on this journey, a moment, an event? Have you always had this interest? Has this always been part of your life?
So my journey started 13 years ago in 2009, and I accredit this to three things. I'm going to tie it all together at the end.
Okay.
So one is my first of three pregnancies, and a friend introduced me to Bradley birthing method, and that they promote natural birth, eating healthy, and then I'm the boss of my body. And so my entire life, I always thought I should or have to do what conventional doctors say or that they know best. And I told my OB that my birth plan is without epidural. And she said, you'll likely surrender to epidural. Most people do. And she even suggested a C-section. So
wow. In the
right?
beginning. Yeah.
In the beginning, yes. And so that showed me that she didn't understand the difference in health for the mother getting incisions and the child's microbiome, between getting inoculated by the mother's beneficial vaginal microbes versus latex gloves nurses wear or blankets, staff skin.
So you were on to these details. I mean, you knew there was something in you that you had this instinct that C-section is not natural, and you knew enough about the microbes to know that that was important for your birth plan.
Well, thanks to the Bradley birthing method.
To the book. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Then, and she always seemed in a rush, and I was being discouraged rather than encouraged. And the key here is that I learned I have a choice, and a decent doctor wouldn't discredit my intention to deliver naturally free of drugs. So I ended up switching OB at 37 weeks, and she,
wow,
right. So late in the day, that's brave, right? A lot of people.
It was so brave. Yeah.
And so she actually delivered all three of my children, and yes, all without epidural, thanks to her support. So because of my birth plan, she made sure the hospital used the organic non-toxic baby wash I brought instead of the paraben-laden Johnson & Johnson. We did delayed cord clamping. We forego the first shot, and I was given time to breastfeed right after birth. And so that was the first. So two is, after giving birth, my mother-in-law, who is from Taiwan, she was adamant that I followed traditional Chinese methodology for postpartum care. And that includes like warm herbal drinks, organ and fish soups, no cold raw food, no cold ice drinks, no exposure to cold air or wind. I wasn't even allowed to open the fridge for 30 days. And so,
wow. Yeah.
Right.
Which is so interesting, because one of the things that I've done is drink room temperature water that I felt has made such a big difference in the way that I feel. So I think that's really interesting that it's promoted for post birth as well. And altogether, nothing cold. That's really interesting.
And actually, this is probably, I'm sorry, we're getting a little off topic, but if during pregnancy, you drink a lot of cold liquids, ice cold water and whatnot, supposedly it's known that the baby would be more prone, have a weakened immune system and be more prone to getting sick, colds and whatnot once they're born. So
during pregnancy, but then after they're born, they have these effects.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So I packed a steamer to the hospital to heat my food, and my dad brought the herbal drinks and the broths, which I ordered from a company that specifically makes food for postpartum care to the hospital. And, as a side note here, I'm trying to recover, and the staff kept trying to bring me pitchers of ice water, constantly
Yep.
offering me pain meds and giving me these gum-laden Yoplait and fructose-laden packaged fruit. Like, I understand that's how the system is, but it's still disappointing to know how far behind we are in creating health and healing. So I mean, this is exaggerating, but I felt like they were trying to kill me. And
yeah, once you start to learn, I mean, for me, it's looking back at my time in the hospital. I spent 7 weeks in the hospital up to the birth of my twins, and so many things. I had that huge, like you mentioned, the huge ice jug of water that I drank and drank and drank. And thankfully, my husband brought me food, which was wonderful every day. But otherwise, if I were to eat what they brought, you're right, it's not healthy food. And you're in the hospital, so it is.
I know it's interesting
ironic.
because it's supposed to, right, ironic, it's supposed to be a place for healing. And so my mother-in-law told me that giving birth is one of the most vulnerable events our body experiences, and that previous ailments, whether before from childhood, teens, 20s, could be remedied if I ate right and took proper care of myself for at least 30 days after giving birth.
Wow. Okay. What
And
did you notice in your recovery? Or can you, I guess you can't really compare it to something else because you didn't have previous, you did something different, but did you notice differences between yourself and maybe what your friends went through, or family members,
actually, I can tell you,
without doing these practices?
I'm gonna, when I tie it together, I'm gonna bring up, I'm gonna answer that question.
Okay, sure,
So,
go ahead.
So lastly was watching Food Inc. documentary, learning about high fructose corn syrup, Monsanto, and the government's involvement. So the first
Food
example, yes, Food Inc. documentary, that's how it all started for me with food. And
okay.
so the first example was about conventional care, less understanding of the importance of natural birth, the dictator approach, doctor's convenience, not being respected, you know. And the second example was about a healing method via food and lifestyle. And the third example was about the food industry. So collectively from these experiences, I realized how food can be medicine or poison, that basic daily actions such as drinking warm water, not leaving my hair wet, eating warm cooked foods, resting can promote healing, and that standard care isn't always very caring. You know, it's limited to medications and surgeries, which are abrasive, even though it does have its place, like for acute care, if you're, you know, have broken limb or something, that's when you know you may need surgery. So I practiced health, and I felt better as I aged, and I was in the best shape after giving birth 3 times versus my teenage years, my 20s, my 30s. You know, I felt so great that
Yes.
I decided to go back to school and earn a master's and several certifications, which include functional medicine, preventive cardiology, integrative health and nutrition, because I want to help other women feel their best as well. So I'm proof we can feel a gazillion times better as we age. So
That's amazing. That is so amazing. And it, you know, I know you, and I sort of, just from following you and talking to you, I know you do all of these things. And I think somebody might look at you and think, how does she do it all? And it is amazing what you're doing. But
that's what I wonder about you.
I know a big part of that is what good care you're taking of yourself. Like you said, you've gotten older, but you've learned to take care of yourself in a way that you're able to do all the things that you want to do and enjoy them.
Yeah. So, you know, I wasn't well before I got pregnant, and it was the way I took care of myself after I gave birth that, you know, I felt the best I have in my life. So.
Wow. That's really cool. It's really amazing. And so along your journey, I know that you've practiced functional medicine, you have one-on-one clients, and then most recently you've come out with a supplement, a vitamin B supplement, and that you feel very passionate about, that it can help people's lives. And there's so many supplements on the market. So I'm really curious, why did you start with a B vitamin? What is really special about it?
So I started with bees because they're essential. They're incredibly important at all stages of life. And, all our cells need bees. They are the building blocks of life. So especially B2, B6, folate, which is B9, and B12 for methylation. So bees are like the electricity needed to charge a battery so the car will run. It affects our energy, brain function, thyroid, skin, immune system, hormones, detoxification. And I also find that most clients need bees. One reason is high MCV, mean corpuscular volume. I see a lot of results in the 90s, which is within reference range, but doesn't mean it's okay or optimal. And that average blood cell size in the 90s, it can't really fit into tiny capillaries for circulation. It's too big. So deficiency in B12 can cause that. And also importantly, some people need and depend on bees due to a MTHFR mutation.
Okay, you mentioned folate in there, and I think if people that have been pregnant before, that kind of sticks out, because you hear about you need folate or folic acid. Folic acid is what you hear the doctor say that you need during pregnancy. Can you talk a little bit about folate specifically?
Yes. So there are studies done where if low or deficient folate is linked to neurotube defects.
Yes.
So it's very important in pregnancy.
And there's a specific type, right? You want folate, and instead of, there's a different types of folate. Is there a specific one that you want for pregnancy? For some reason, I've seen this before.
So the active form is methylfolate, and and most of the supplements are made with folic acid. That's the synthetic form. So the body still has to biochemically convert that. If, granted, there's no impairment.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I think that's a good distinction, the synthetic versus the methylfolate. And the other thing that you mentioned was the MTHFR. And so it's funny, I first heard this word, the MTHFR mutation. My cousin brought this up to me years ago. I think I was like in college, maybe. This was before I really kind of got started on my journey. And she was telling me all these changes she was making. And she's like, you really should get tested for this, because this has helped me to know that I have it. Can you explain a little bit about what that mutation is, and maybe what people should do that have it?
Yes. So MTHFR, which is methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, is a gene that instructs our body to make an enzyme that converts folic acid or folate to methylfolate. And about 50% of Americans have this MTHFR mutation, or SNP, SNP, which is a single nucleopeptide polymorphism. And these individuals have reduced enzyme activity and therefore struggle to convert folic acid to the active form methylfolate. So,
okay.
And
so
it's, sorry.
No, you can go ahead. No, go ahead.
And it's required for methylation. And folate in other bees, like I mentioned earlier, they're like electricity, and methylation is like the battery, and our body is like the car. So not enough electricity, then, we're going to run sluggishly or have low energy, poor detoxification, anxiety, even PMS. So people with this polymorphism can eat foods or take synthetic supplements with folic acid and still struggle with this conversion. And it can cause buildup of folic acid. So a big problem with buildup of folic acid is that it increases homocysteine, and high homocysteine increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, dementia, infertility. It damages arteries. And so folate, in partner with B6, B12, break down homocysteine to create methionine, and that breaks down fat so it doesn't accumulate in our arteries. And cysteine it helps make collagen. It's important for hair growth that our body needs. So.
Wow. So we actually can use B vitamins just to get us charged, like you said, like electricity, but also to prevent other adverse health events in our future, is what you're saying, because it prevents us from building up this folate. Is that right?
Folic acid.
Folic acid.
That's the buildup of folic acid. Yeah.
Okay.
So people who have, this polymorphism, or who older people, because the conversion becomes more sluggish when you get older.
Okay.
We can have buildup of folic acid from food, from synthetic forms in the supplements. So it's important to take the active form.
The active form. Okay. And that's what's in your B vitamin. And that's what makes it extra special for people that have this MTHFR issue.
Yeah. Balance is particularly important for those with MTHFR because it's the active form. It's in 5-MTHF, and it's readily to be used in the methylation cycle to support the body's needs, including DNA repair.
Okay. And so Balance, I don't think I mentioned this before, but Balance is her vitamin, the name of her vitamin B supplement. And as she's been describing, there are multiple components in that B vitamin, folate being one of them. So that's amazing. That's amazing. And speaking of supplements in general, what should people look out for when they're trying to supplement? If you're going to buy supplements, you mentioned that some supplements have synthetic forms or things that our body doesn't process as well as bioavailable forms. So what should we look for?
Okay, so the first thing I look at are other ingredients, because if it contains magnesium stearate, stearic acid, silicon dioxide, silica, amorphous silica, or microcrystalline cellulose, then it won't make my cut. And almost 100% of supplements are made with those potentially harmful fillers and flow agents. And if we look into microcrystalline cellulose, for example, it's typically made from wood pulp, which can't be broken down or absorbed by the body. And studies show that it can accumulate and clog up in our body and cause inflammation, also digestive upset. And with magnesium stearate, it's usually made from a hydrogenated process. So it is hydrogenated oil, and companies usually use palm, and palm oil is linked to cancer. And as a side note, most liquid supplement uses palm as a base. And so stearates have been known to suppress T cells, and that which means it lowers our immune system. So for silicon dioxide, it's linked to inflammation and leaky gut. So, and actually, there's not many studies on this, but I believe it's one of those ingredients like BHT in food, BPA in plastic, PTFE in nonstick cookware, or recently benzene in dry shampoo, where later on the authorities reveal how much harm it can cause on our body. So the FDA considers these generally safe in small amounts. So that says something. And so I believe we can choose cleaner supplements, especially if we're taking it every day, which we know has a cumulative effect like everything else we expose ourselves to. So plus the point of taking a supplement is to add benefit, not do harm. So the better ones use rice as fillers. And if so, or if it's a type of food, I'd make sure it's organic, because we want to avoid pesticide, herbicide, glyphosate, and other toxic chemicals.
Right. It has to be, yeah.
Another thing to keep in mind is that the actual vitamin may take up only about 20 to 60% of the capsule. So the rest is likely fillers. That could be a lot of wood pulp and some conventional seed oils that people could be taking daily. So
and the wood pulp is the microcrystalline. Microcrystalline? Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
And so a standard capsule size is size 00. No one really, identifies. I haven't seen it identified on any bottle, but standard size is 00, and it holds about 735 milligrams of content. And so if the vitamin adds up to 400 milligrams, then the rest of the 335 milligrams are just fillers. So that's something to look at.
And why are they putting filler in there? Like, what's the point of making the vitamin bigger, I guess?
I guess, well, for one, I think it's the standard size. I think it's extremely cost efficient. Another main thing is it's so it doesn't clump up. They're used as anti-caking material, perhaps for it to last longer as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the next thing I'm looking for are forms, and if they are in active or methylated forms, as in the case of bees. For example, in vitamin E, I'm looking for D-alpha tocopherol and not D-alpha tocopherol. And in And in vitamin D, I'm sorry, did I say D or E earlier? But earlier I meant E.
You said E, I think.
Okay. So in vitamin D, I'm looking for D3 and not D2, and that it's paired with K2. And in folate, which is B9, I'm looking for 5-MTHF and not folic acid. So because all of the synthetic forms are competing for receptors in our body, and it can cause buildup and serious complications because we want the active form to occupy our receptors. We want them active and functioning. So going back to D2, that's what cereals and protein bars tend to be fortified with.
Right. So in this way, we're not receiving the benefit. Is that right?
Correct.
When they're not in the proper forms, our body doesn't recognize it and process it.
Correct. And, we have certain number of receptors in our body, and if it's being occupied by inactive forms, then, we're not getting the bioactive form. And yeah. So the next thing I'm looking for is the amount, such as B6. So a good level may be about 10 to 15 milligrams, and most B complex I see, they use up to or more than 50 milligrams. So it depends on the person, and there can be therapeutic experiences at 10 to 15 milligrams. But if there's too much, this can cause anxiety because B6 is involved with synthesizing neurotransmitters. So the amount matters and varies per individual. And a rule of thumb, always start supplements low and slow because it sets off all sorts of pathways. I see doctors prescribing people like 5,000 IU of vitamin D off the bat, and vitamin D is a hormone. So even though many people are deficient in D, it's still best to start any supplement at a low dosage.
Wow, that's great advice. Yeah.
And I look for capsule because it offers faster release versus tablet, which has a slower release. And this can be a problem for people with slower digestion, especially those that experience constipation. Also with tablet, it's really challenging to avoid harmful compounding ingredients. I haven't seen one clean one yet. So.
Wow, not one clean tablet.
Right. So usually, because they say silicone dioxide is safe, and that's what it can be compounded with. But
that's interesting about the silicone dioxide. I remember we talked about this a long time ago, and you had explained that a lot of the silicone dioxide that is in supplements is made with nanotechnology?
Yes. Well, it's synthetic. It's lab derived. It can be in nanoparticle size, and if so, like even the European Food and Safety Authorities also question that. So there's still not enough study, but there are some studies to indicate that it causes, inflammation.
And it's like you said, they give that caveat, small amounts. And I feel like that's almost a red flag, because if you've been following things for long enough, in my experience, when something comes out and it might not be great, it's okay in small amount. A few years later, they come out and say, then the research is done and we find out this is not good. So we want to err on the side of caution in those cases.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I prefer vegan or vegetarian capsule because animal derived ones could be laden with growth hormones. And that's
Oh,
difficult to
okay.
trace back because, capsule material is usually whoever the supplement company has a relationship with, and nearly 100% of manufacturers don't know exactly what it's made of, or maybe they don't want to reveal it. So I suspect that animal derived capsules could be made from animals with genetically modified feed, but possibly still have non-GMO verification on the bottle, because the
Oh,
verification may refer to the capsule filling and not the animal that ate corn where its fat was used to make the capsule, along with carrageenan and other gelling agents. It's my thought from contacting manufacturers and reading their responses.
that makes a lot of sense. I love that you put so much thought into the detail to do everything that you could to make it as safe as possible. I found this so interesting on your website. You talked about how many manufacturers you talked to and how few were able to meet your requirements. And I think that just speaks to the amount of supplements that are on the market, and you can just infer and think about how many really are quality. So
Right.
I appreciate what you're putting out.
Thank you. And lastly, I'm looking for a GMP certified. That's good manufacturing practice, because it means the manufacturer is regulated. So they have to follow guidelines, and there are regular inspections. And if they don't follow the guidelines, then they risk having to close. So.
Right, right. One other thing I want to go back to, if it's okay, and ask you about, you mentioned these fillers that we should avoid. I know that there's something else that's in your B that you don't have the fillers, but you have something else that's actually beneficial. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I use organic shiitake instead. So, we don't need the wood pulp, the hydrogenated oil, magnesium stearate, stearic acid. So I use organic shiitake, and I also use that as a source of choline, which is known to, it's an essential nutrient, and it's known to help break down fat in the liver.
Oh, wow. Okay. So is choline is something that we don't get a lot from our diet regularly? Do most people get choline?
It depends on what kind of diet a person has, but
Yeah.
eggs are very high in choline, especially if they're organic and pasture raised.
Okay.
And meat as well. Yeah, but eggs contain a lot of choline, and also mushrooms.
So it's nice that you have that added benefit in there. You've got rid of something potentially harmful and put something in there that people can benefit from. That's really cool.
Thank you. And most supplement companies, they don't add the oil that they use as a flow agent, and a lot of times they use seed oil. I mean, organic or not, you don't want to eat sunflower, safflower, or soy or corn oil, so they don't include that in there. But I use, it makes up less than 1.5% of the supplement. So for me, I used extra virgin organic hemp seed oil.
Wow. Okay. So great. Really. I want to know, what is next for the Healthy Elephants?
I would love to make an herbal supplement that supports liver. I think it can be purposeful for many of us, both male and female, and also vision, because many people, especially Asians, have poor vision, my son included, from paternal side. So I'd say liver support and vision support.
Oh, I can't wait. Excited to see what you come with next. And I love this conversation because this is like actionable things that people can look for and do to improve their health. I think that people listening are trying to make changes for their health. And I would like to know, for those people that are trying to improve their health, they're starting, what is something that they can do in their life that they can switch to help them on their journey?
Eat more leafy greens. So it's brimming with antioxidants and fiber. It helps balances hormone, it regulates blood sugar, it helps with detoxification, it boosts immune system, it lowers triglyceride, it reduces risk of cancer, it supports thyroid. Granted, these are eaten cooked. It's more powerful than any drugs because drugs are concentrated and can't compete with all the phytonutrients nature has to offer. And so leaves like bok choy, mustard greens, kale, spinach, watercress. What's interesting is it's rare. I can't think of anyone to find an integrative doctor or health enthusiast who actually consumes a lot of cooked leafy greens. I see a lot of raw salads and starchy vegetables. Like I'm surprised when I see these food halls and there's a lot of squash, carrot, potatoes, yams, which are beneficial, but higher in carbs, lower in fiber. So I think non-starchy vegetables, especially cooked leafy greens, is, what I recommend for regulating metabolic function and fighting disease. I think that's where it's at. That's like
so many
the
benefits.
most impactful change a person can make. Just add more cooked leafy greens.
I love that. And you really inspired me to do that. And I've noticed such a difference. Anytime I'm kind of feeling off and then I look at what I've been eating, if I just start, like now I even start before every meal and specifically cooked, that I got from you, specifically cooked and more leafy greens. And it makes such a big difference. Steaming the kale, the mustard greens, whatever the dark green is, if you steam it first, you feel better. I mean, it's amazing. And do you want to talk about why that is? I know you had a long post about this a while ago that I saved, but you kind of explain why that's better. And I do think it's really interesting that other health professionals are not talking about steaming them. You hear a lot about raw and like the benefits of eating things raw, but there's nuance to it, right? Not everything should be eaten raw.
Right. So we know how powerful cruciferous vegetables can be, but they are also high in goitrogens, which block the thyroid from synthesizing thyroid hormones. And so cooking reduces it. And so we can reap the benefits from the properties from the cruciferous vegetables, without having to, hinder our thyroid function. And so with like spinach, I see a lot of people add raw spinach in juices, eat it as a raw salad, but spinach and beets, they're high in oxalate, which, they bind to, or they have an affinity for calcium and iron and magnesium. And so we're not absorbing those nutrients when we're eating it, but cooking reduces it. So that's how we can maximize on nutrients for our bodies. Yeah.
That's really interesting. It's an important point. I love that tip.
Yeah.
I think you've shared so much valuable information in this conversation. I've learned so much, and I think people are going to really, really get a lot from this. I am so happy to have your balance. Thank you for creating it.
It's my pleasure. I so far, everyone who's taken it has told me about how much energy they feel and, that they can focus better. So I feel great. Like I noticed the difference between this versus, the other ones I was taking before out of necessity. So it's been purity tested, and I feel like it's the right form, and the level is a basic amount, so people can titrate up as necessary. And I feel the difference. My father feels the difference. So
I feel the difference too. It really is that the first day I took it, actually the second day I took it, I was out in the sun a lot, and that day it was a weekend and I was out with my family, and typically I would come in from a day like that and just be sort of drained. I would need, but when I told my husband, I was like, I feel fine. We got home and I felt great. Like I could continue on my day. And it really is amazing when you're taking something so quality and so good for your body, you really do notice a difference from the others. So
I'm happy to hear. That's the whole point, for people to feel better, have a better life experience. go about your day with more energy and better brain function, become more efficient, that's how life should be.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you. It was an honor to be on your show. Thank you so much for the invite.
Yeah, of course. I'm honored to have you as my first episode guest.